One could hardly wish for a clearer example of the peace marriage than this story of Ingjald, son of Froda, and Frauaru, who, by the way, is never called a peace weaver. Beowulf's gnomic comment conveys an impression that such marriages were frequent enough to generalize about, and his generalization is that they don't work out. In the scholarship on Beowulf, one frequently reads that peace marriages were common in both literature and history. Scholars who make the claim often simply refer to other scholars making the same claim, and actual examples can be hard to track down. So, how common were peace marriages? The evidence from Beowulf is not encouraging. Two of the poem's other women, Walchtheu and Hildeburh, are widely thought to have been married for the purpose of making peace. The whole of the evidence for Walchtheu is the phrase Friðusib folka, peace relation of the people, in line 2017. The word has no more connection with marriage than Freðaweb has. There's no evidence at all concerning the marriage of Hildeburh, the tragic queen of the Finn episode, but rather a pair of assumptions. That the Danes and Frisians have been at odds for a long time, and that they once attempted to make peace by means of the marriage of Hildeburh and Finn. But these assumptions are no more likely than others. Say that the conflict is recent, and that Hildeburh's marriage took place at a time when relations were good. History ought to provide more examples than literature of the peace marriage. After all, most kings were married. It's a fact of life that royal marriages are political, and a peace marriage would be a kind of political marriage. A survey by Pauline Stafford of the marriages of West Saxon royalty from 800 to 1066 shows kings marrying to secure the support of powerful families and to enter into useful alliances abroad, but no unambiguous examples of the peace marriage. In Bede's Ecclesiastical History and other sources, one finds mention of several marriages that could well have been arranged for the purpose of making peace. But neither Bede nor any other Anglo-Saxon writer that I've come across, with the sole exception of the Beowulf poet writing of Frauaru, speaks of any marriage in this way. In the various discussions of the peace marriages of peace weavers in Beowulf, there's been little attempt to figure out how and when they were arranged. Rather, the scholarship seems to be informed by a pair of unstated assumptions. One is that if one has an unmarried woman on hand, one can at any time give her away in marriage and thereby somehow achieve peace. We do have some South Park fans here. The other is that peace marriages were mutually agreed upon by war-weary kings negotiating as equals. Neither of these assumptions will stand up to examination. Leaving aside the obvious point that a single king or prince must be available to match up with one's single princess, peace marriages don't make sense under all possible conditions. And though medieval kings must often have been war-weary, "How toilsome is my life," cries Charlemagne, they didn't negotiate as equals when they didn't have to. The marriage of an unnamed sister of the terrifying, immensely powerful, and resolutely pagan king Penda of Mercia to Cainwalch of the West Saxons will illustrate the point. Penda came to the Mercian throne around the year 626. 2 years later, he fought a battle against Cunegils, king of the West Saxons, who came to terms. Around 635, Cunegils converted to Christianity, with the powerful Oswald of Northumbria standing sponsor, and soon afterwards Oswald married Cunegils' daughter. Oswald fell in battle against Penda in 642, and Northumbria split into its two constituent kingdoms, Bernicia and Deira. On Cunegils' death soon afterwards, his son Cainwalch succeeded him as king of the West Saxons. Some 2 years later, Penda drove Cainwalch from his kingdom because he'd repudiated his wife, Penda's sister, and taken another. This is the first we hear of Cainwalch's marriage. Cainwalch spent 3 years in exile with Anna, king of the East Angles, before he was able to return to his kingdom. The marriages and conversions in this narrative need to be read against the shifting relationships of the West Saxons with their allies and enemies. From 628 to around 635, Penda dominated the West Saxons. but then Königils acquired a powerful protector in Oswald. Their alliance was sealed with the establishment of a reciprocal relationship which Bede thought pleasing to God, Königils as Oswald's godson, and Oswald as Königils' son-in-law. Oswald's was no peace marriage. But Oswald's protection ended with his death in 642. This has to have made 643 an awkward time for Cænwalch to succeed his father. Unfortunately, our sources don't say when Cænwalch married Penda's sister. Likely periods are from 628 to 635 and from 642 to 645. The period in between, when the West Saxons were allied with Oswald, seems unlikely. What would have been the point at a time when the West Saxons must have had little contact with the Mercians? Patrick Sims Williams suggests that the marriage might have been arranged as part of the settlement after the loss to Penda in 628, and this seems likely, but in any case, it can only belong to a period of Mercian dominance. It's pointless to guess whether Cænwalch's separation from his wife was motivated more by personal or political considerations, but there can be no doubt that in repudiating her, he also repudiated whatever understanding existed between the West Saxons and Mercia at that time, an understanding that must have included an acknowledgement by Cænwalch of Mercian overlordship. Penda certainly seems to have understood the repudiation of his sister in this way, and in reply he set out to demonstrate that Cænwalch would be permitted to retain his throne only on Mercian terms. No one records how Cænwalch was finally restored to his kingdom, but it's perfectly likely that it was indeed on Mercian terms, that Cænwalch patched up relations with Penda and perhaps even took back his Mercian wife. Other likely peace marriages aren't better documented than that of Penda's sister with Cænwalch, but in each case the exchange takes place in an unequal relationship where the more powerful party is able to impose peace on its own terms. Further, it's usually the more powerful party that gives the woman. To understand these marriages better, it may help to glance briefly at another model for marriage between hostile groups, the one that isn't well represented, if at all, in Anglo-Saxon England, the queen as lute. Paul the Deacon tells a story that shouldn't be trusted as history, how Alboin, king of the Lombards, defeated and killed Cunimund, king of the Gepids, and carried off and married his daughter Rosamund. This marriage didn't work out well. After Alboin got drunk at a feast and offered Rosamund a cup he'd had made from Cunimund's skull, waggishly suggesting that she enjoy a drink with her dad, she plotted his assassination. The story told by Gregory of Tours and Venantius Fortunatus of the marriage of St. Radegund to the Frankish king Clothari belongs in the same genre, though the ending of this marriage was less bloody. She ran away. The marriages of Rosamund and Radegund are extreme instances of the case of a woman transferred from the weak group to a stronger one. But they're not entirely different from Gregory of Tours' story of how, when the Frankish king Clovis asked for the hand of St. Clotilde, a princess of the Burgundians, her uncle, King Gundobad, an enemy of Clovis, was afraid to refuse.